not unlike a jingle, and any greater meaning found in the music and advertising is a fluke. He actually, those are his exact words, it's a fluke. And then he says, he also accentuates the idea of the general public just not being familiar with classical music. He says that Un Bel D is composed by Verdi, which is not, it's Puccini, you know, stuff like that. Like he misappropriates a whole bunch of stuff, kind of glosses over classical music history in general. Granted, he was a media communications student, so it's a little bit different, but that's kind of, he talks about that music used in advertising, it's for jingles. That's what it's there for. So it's used to create a specific mood. Next is, and the most recent, one of the most recent is Ron Rodman. Ron Rodman wrote 2 essays, one in 1997 and one in 2009. They both build on the same sort of idea. He takes John Fisk's codes of television. So there are certain codes that are understood in television. So when you're watching TV, it's understood that you accept that it is a 3-walled room and you are the 4th wall when you're looking, you know, and that's why it's okay when you're watching TV that all 4 people are sitting on one side of the table. So they're all facing the camera, the 4th wall, that sort of thing. So there's certain codes of television. There's certain things that are understood and assumed when you're watching TV. Rodman builds on this, and he builds a codes of television music. So musical codes that are understood or assumed to represent specific meanings within society. So, for example, if you're watching a television show or a television advertisement that has something to do with a Ivy League school, then there will be an a cappella men's chorus singing somewhere. You know, like that's that musical code that tells us, that places that place. So the music is then enforcing the ideas of the images that are there. So, he talks about targeting and that sort of thing. So rock music is used for a younger generation, and alternate rock is specifically to target for young men between 18 and 25 and that sort of thing. And he actually blatantly says that classical music is a social, hierarchical, high culture reference. And classical music is used to raise the cultural esteem of whatever product it is that's being advertised, and that's why it's being used there.
Yeah, we're at the top of the pyramid.
Yeah. In 2009, what he does is he takes this code of television music, combines it with Huron's outlined elements of effective marketing, and he puts these together to find deeper meaning in the marketing message carried through the music. And he uses a UPS advertisement, what can brown do for you, and he breaks down the music and the images, and he says this is what this musical code is telling us about this image, and it's not just about what UPS can do for the consumer, but what UPS is also doing for their employees and the world at large, and blah, 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 blah. So that's kind of what Ron Rodman does. He just published a book a week and a half before I handed in my thesis. He published a book, and thankfully none of his arguments have changed, which is very good for me. Because if that book had been left on my thesis, I'm going to be food. So anyways, then we have Michel Chion. So this is moving away from where the theories have been and where the theory is going. Michel Chion is a French theorist. He's a philosopher. He's kind of like the French version of Adorno sometimes. Very big, broad ideas. And in early 1990s, he wrote a collection of books all talking about sound and film and what sound does for film. One of these is audio-vision. And in audio-vision, he actually states we never see the same thing when we also hear. We don't hear the same thing when we see as well. We must therefore get beyond the preoccupations, such as identifying so-called redundancies between two domains and debating interrelations between the forces. So what he's saying is, we can't just say that there's an image and there's music, and the music does this to the image. He's pointing out that it is actually a text, and the whole text with music and image are an object. And it's that object that we need to be looking at when we're looking at the analysis of anything like this. And he's really the first person to kind of synthesize this idea. Everybody else up until this point, and even now, they're still saying the music imparts something upon the image. Chion is saying, no, it's a musicological text. And so you've got two schools when looking at film music analysis. Some people look at the music and compare it to the film, and some people take the film as the text. I'm one of those who take the film as the text. I transcribe from the film. I don't look at a score. Same sort of thing. So that's what he's talking about. You need to marry those two things together. And so he introduces something called the audiovisual contract. This is the mutual understanding between the medium and the viewer. And so when the medium changes the contract with an alteration that's either an unexpected image or an unexpected sound, the viewer complacently accepts this alteration because their subjectivity has already been, it's part within the culture industry, their subjectivity has already been put into question. So it shifts. One thing is that you accept this alteration, you accept this change in the audiovisual contract, but you change your listening style from a casual listening to semantic listening. So casual listening is listening for the purpose of gaining information about the sound's sources. So when you're listening to something and you hear something and you say, oh, that hum is from the refrigerator that's in the corner, or that sort of thing. Whereas semantic listening is gaining information for what's communicated in the sound. So the hum of the refrigerator, what does that tell us about the venue, sort of idea. So the point I want to draw on here is that this concept contradicts, or how does it contradict everything else that Rodman and everybody else, what they've said about music. And it does, it's a complete contradiction. Philip Tagg is the final stop on the brief, as brief as I can be. There's a lot more in my thesis. Historiography of the television advertising music. Philip Tagg is from England, and he's actually now a professor emeritus at the Université de Montreal. And he wrote the only truly comprehensive text in approaching a true musicology of television music. So he wrote this book in 2002. It is 1,500 pages. It's an enormous book called 10 Little Title Tunes. And what he does is he takes 10 title tunes, 10 theme songs from 10 television shows and breaks them down. And he takes the image and he puts different music with it, and he does all sorts of different experiments and that sort of thing. So it's this musicology of multimedia. And one of the things that Tagg calls for is he calls for a historiography, sources, and semiotic meaning of the musical genre in question. So he says before you can even start doing a musicological analysis of anything, you need to have a full musicology of the music and of the medium that it's coming from. So each genre of music and each type of musical multimedia, so television advertising or television show or theme music or TV video, music video would need to be approached in a manner unique to that genre medium pairing, is one of the things that he talks about. It is so detail-oriented and time-consuming. It's very exhaustive but very, very complete. 1,500 pages for 10 30-second tunes. Like, it's crazy. When I talked to him on the phone, he was like, yeah, he was like talking like big, big words. I was like, oh my, I don't know if I can prepare for this. But that was 3 years ago, so. But what he does is in laying this out, he lays out a very, very clear path for a musicologist to follow. And so that's kind of the pathway that I'm trying to follow. So when approaching the music differently, one of the things we need to accept is the status quo. The status quo is two things. There are two things that are understood about television advertising music. The first is that the music, it's assumed that the music has an effect upon the image, and that the Rodman's codes of television music are indeed widely understood and generally accepted. So that, yes, when we hear classical music, we assume that, yes, it is going to be something like a car or British Airways and exotic travel and that sort of thing. But if that is the case, if we are accepting this and we assume this as we're moving forward, how can we explain, analyze, or come to a greater understanding when we have television commercials like the 3 following commercials?
I just figured his arm was getting tired by now.
Treasure the rainbow. Taste the rainbow.
So there we've got
What the hell was that all
three
about?
completely different television advertisements. There are actually a lot of common features between these three. Of course, all of them use opera or dramatic chorus. They're all actually composed by Verdi. The first is coming from La Traviata. The second movement is the Gypsies chorus, when the gypsies are arriving at one of the parties. The second one is from Verdi's Requiem. It's the Dies Irae from Verdi's Requiem. So even though it's not an opera, it's a dramatic chorus, and it is a very operatic work. If somebody who didn't know their Verdi would be like, oh, that's opera. And then the last one is also from La Traviata, and it's the drinking chorus, the L'Abbiamo drinking chorus from La Traviata, one of the opening scenes of La Traviata. So all three of these use opera or dramatic chorus. In all three of these, obviously, that original musical meaning, the original musical object, is not there. That's completely lost. So that right away kind of really contradicts a lot of those assumptions that Rodman and Huron and Springer are building on. Is that, you know, that it's drawing from a musical object and then imparting it upon the image. And one thing that's interesting is that the music is actually affected by the images past and present. So everybody recognizes the drinking chorus. They may not recognize it from being from an opera, but they recognize it from diaper commercials or a car commercial or a TV show. When you're even in the Black commercial, you were thinking Sopranos or something, some other cultural reference. So these pieces of music are coming in with cultural baggage because they've been divorced from the cultural object, the musical object.